start with, I will come to Helen, but I will start with Yofi. Yofi, we dealt with you for a while, and we worked on few projects, and being a CEO of Ghana Investment Promotion Agency, how did you find this international cooperation, and how can this international cooperation contribute to Africa? We signed so many MOUs and all this. How can we convert these MOUs to actual projects?
Thank you very much, Walid. I think you ask a very interesting question, and interesting in many ways. Because as we look at our partnership and we think of the SDGs, which seems to be the track on which we are all proceeding now, green finance, green technologies, green industry, etc., etc. There are two of the SDGs that drive a lot of what we do now, especially between Ghana and the UAE. The first one is SDG number 1, which is poverty alleviation, poverty eradication, and SDG 17, which is partnerships for linkages and trade. And for us in Ghana, we've seen the UAE as a hub for getting our exports, particularly in the agri sector, into the GCC and into the bigger export world. The UAE has been dynamic in creating the market access through many vehicles, and today I'm told that Gulf Foods, for example, is one of the most important conferences that has African interest because it's agro-based. It's agricultural food and agricultural processing, etc., etc. So that is a channel that a lot of African agricultural produce is finding its way into the world through Gulf Foods and the GCC. But that's just not all. We've seen the UAE also look at Africa in a very constructive way. And Ghana's engagement to the UAE is to make Ghana an entry hub into the African markets using the AFCFTA. And so we have quite a significant amount of engagement with the UAE on many fronts. And as Walid said, a number of MOUs have been signed. Now is the time for us to actualize them. And as you heard from Ms. Doherty on the previous panel, they don't only just finance, they facilitate, they advise. And so we will use that vehicle to try and tie up a number of the prospects that we have. I know that there's been quite a number of investments in Ghana from the UAE, over 2 billion in real estate and infrastructure, quite a significant amount in energy and the solar space. They are also looking at other forms of infrastructure like roads, and then also into manufacturing. But quite interestingly, into agricultural production. And so, in my tenure as CEO of the GIPC, I've tried to drive a relationship that is based on mutuality. We use the UAE as a hub, and they use Ghana as a hub. And I think that is a very, very constructive engagement that we need to even facilitate much more than we have before.
Thank you very much, Yofi. Helen, how are you doing today? Helen, you know, I'm a big believer that, and I saw it through the stage that we've gone through in Dubai for manufacturing and industry. And I am always ambitious that Africa can be more of a manufacturing hub that can attract. How do you see the relationship between UAE and Africa, and how we can support in attracting industry to Africa, my sister?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. So, you know, the role the UAE will play or can play in the industrialization of Africa cannot be underrated or underestimated. The UAE is currently number 1 from the Gulf Cooperation states with respect to their investments in Africa. I believe as of 2023, over $60 billion had been invested in Africa, of which 4.5 billion went into the renewable energy sector. The UAE is also home to 21,000 African companies who are doing business and are thriving in the UAE. So Africa and the UAE have multiple things in common. And I'll just like to outline a few of them. When you look at the area of port logistics, Africa has 17% of the world population, but they only control 4% of container traffic. And why is that? I mean, if you look at the condition of our ports, right, the average depth of an African port is about 15 meters. If you need the big ships to dock on African ports, you need an average depth of 21 meters. UAE has established itself as a global leader in the area of port development, port construction, and port logistics. So I believe a synergy, bringing in some of that expertise to help African ports, can be one critical area where they can support Africa's industrialization. The second is in the area of food security. And I'm sure over the last couple of days, it must have come up in many conversations. Africa is home to the world's most arable land. We know that the UAE currently imports 90% of their food. So why not look to Africa? But in looking to Africa, you need to help Africa realize its potential. And this is where we would look for support in terms of technology that can boost local production of food that can be exported to the UAE. So at the end of the day, it's a symbiotic relationship, right? UAE can look to Africa as a veritable source for food, and it can also help Africa in improving their foreign exchange and their export ambitions. The third is in the area of value addition, and I like to use the term beneficiation. Africa, we know, is home to the largest resources, natural resources, mineral resources, resources that can drive the conversation around our ambitions for pursuing a path to reduce emissions and gain green industrialization. But we have an innate problem, right? We export the natural resources in their raw state, and then we turn around and import the finished goods. So one of the things that we've been advocating for in Afreximbank, and my colleague spoke to it earlier on, is the creation of localized capacity, value addition.
Can I interrupt?
Yes, please.
Actually, I was not planning to ask this question, but I have to be a bit naughty with you, Helen. We talk about these, we have food security. You don't need to preach me. I see Nigeria is the second largest producer of food security, of fruit and vegetable in the continent. But the percentage of waste is this. We talked about manufacturing, and we know that, but where is the plan? It's about planning. Where is it? How can we come up with that plan?
I think it would take a lot of collaboration, and let me try and address each of the problems that you raised. For example, the issue of wastage. It takes an average of maybe 10 days to get the food from where it's produced in the farm to the point of export. And that's because most of these foods are transported by roads. And if you want to use Nigeria as an example, and I can speak to that because I am from Nigeria, if you look at the condition of our roads, it's in a very poor state. I mean, we are making attempts to develop rail infrastructure, which will help in the mobility of foods. But most of the transportation now is dependent on roads. And with the poor state of our infrastructure, you find that by the time the food gets to the point of export, 50% of it is already rotten and is wasted. And I think, it's a bit of a catch-22. We need to export to get foreign exchange, and it is that same foreign exchange that we're going to use to industrialize. And when I say industrialize, what do I mean? I mean develop trade enabling infrastructure, improve access to electricity, right? It's been said countless times that 600 people in Africa have no access to electricity, of which Nigeria, we have only achieved 40% electrification rate. So you need to improve your export development. You need to reduce your dependency on importation.
I will come to that.
And
But so, I mean, I buy what you're saying, but all of Africa, all of outside Africa, they want to see the solution.
yes,
You know, whether it's cool stores in each state, whether it's, you know, sometimes we highlight the problem. But I think I am a believer that fixing Africa is not difficult. You know? I will come back to you later with another question, but my second, Mr. Eugene, you know, before coming, I had a very interesting discussion with your CEO. He gives you his regard. He couldn't come. He had one of the things that Port of Baku, which is very interesting, people wondering what does Port of Baku has to do with this forum. Okay, I mean, if I wasn't involved in it, I would have wondered, why do we need Port of Baku to sit with us in this forum? Port of Baku is actually starting silos for grain silos. One of the biggest challenges that we have in Africa today is grain. Because everybody knows the issue in Ukraine and Russia. So one of the things that Port of Baku is now looking at is to develop storage of silo, starting by 50 all the way to 200. So cargo from Russia or Ukraine, I don't know that one, I'm not involved in it, but the cargo will be stored in Azerbaijan and it will be shipped to Middle East and Africa. Can you do that?
The reason why we can do that is because the port of Baku is located strategically in Azerbaijan, right? And which Azerbaijan is located at the apex of the C5 countries, Central Asia countries, which provided a logistic outlet to reach the maritime Silk Road towards Africa or to the Middle East. We have in our infrastructure a fertilizer silo and capabilities to handle carbon mine. And a lot of this cargo come from either Turkmenbashi in Turkmenistan or Kazakhstan. Fertilizer. You know, after the Ukraine-Russia war started, trade dynamics changed. Gas was in short supply, but gas is in plentiful supply in Central Asia. And this became the feedstock to produce fertilizer. And Azerbaijan was in a very good location where Baku is located to facilitate this kind of trade flows.
Eugene, now listen, I don't believe in talking. You have Afreximbank, you have other people. What do you need from Africans or Africa to move this project forward? And what will make it happen? I'm sorry, I have to give you the hard question.
Well, there are two things you're talking here. You're talking about grain or you're talking about fertilizer?
No, now I'm talking whatever makes money.
Okay, fine. Wherever there's a demand for it.
Grain is always demand, and
right.
Fertilizer.
And if you look at Port Baku's role here, we will provide the necessary infrastructure, whether it's grain or silo, to facilitate these movements. Okay? There's also the presence of Abu Dhabi in Kurik. They have some important strategic investments assisting the Kazakhs to provide vessels to facilitate this kind of trade. So there are a few things that UAE can exist can assist. One is the strategic investments of key infrastructure, whether it's in ports or vessels, right? And from the African side, they have to provide us the demand so that there be some guarantees of such a demand which will justify the investments for new infrastructure to facilitate these kind of trade flows.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. My fourth speaker, as the SME, is the backbone of any country is the SME. Azerbaijan is the host country. We believe from the first visit to Azerbaijan, I got more time than Helen. I went around Baku, I seen the country. I was amazed. There's a lot of opportunity, the products, fruits, etc. How do you see Azerbaijan SME benefiting, whether it's from import or export, and how they can partner with Africa via UAE or vice versa? By the way, I changed most of the questions that they gave me, so I apologize for that. No. Always Yufi is the fixer.
Yeah. So you see, we already have cooperation.
Yes.
So basically, of course, the SMEs are the backbone of any economy. And Azerbaijan, like the government of Azerbaijan has put a lot of importance on the development of the SMEs. That's why our agency was created by the decree of the president in 2017, and starting from 2018, we started operating. So there are many mechanisms that we're using to develop SMEs. I can be giving you a brief about them, just few of them. And then later on, I will be telling you how are we promoting this trade through UAE. So basically, one of the mechanisms that we are making for SMEs is SME development centers. So we believe that capacity building is one of the main things, right? Because we know that SMEs, they can be producing very good goods, products, but they wouldn't be able to know how to make it bankable, how to expand it, how to make it scale. They wouldn't know how to market it. So that's where we come in. So we as a government, we are basically facilitators. So one of the tools, again, that we have provided for our SMEs is to establish an Azerbaijan trade house in UAE. It's in the Pearl in Dubai, where the goods from Azerbaijan are being basically displayed there. Why? Because we understand that UAE is also an important market for us.
This is through trade center.
It's not a trade center, it's trade house, yes. So if you are talking about the connection between Africa and Azerbaijan and UAE, I'll be giving you a few examples of some businessmen who have been exporting fruits, especially fruits and vegetables from Azerbaijan, but later on they found out that to export it, they were exporting it to UAE. But later on they found out that exporting from Africa to UAE makes more sense in terms of commercial value. So some of them have moved to Africa. Now they have become very rich and prosperous businessmen. So they have basically learned the experience in Azerbaijan, but now they are applying to bring the goods from Africa to UAE.
This lady, she's sitting looking at her clock, so I apologize. Helen, what I will do, sorry, I apologize, the time issue, but I will ask one question. You have 2 minutes to answer it. I'll start one by one. Helen, the Secretary General of Africa Free Continental was here, and specifically, the issue of, promoting climate adaptation and resilience in Africa. How, in 2 minutes, how do you see it working? How do you see the solution, etc.?
Okay, thank you. So as we heard earlier on, the AFCFTA, if implemented correctly, would unlock about $3.4 trillion to boost the African continent. And that is monies that can be channeled towards funding our climate and adaptation aspirations. In fact, it's a veritable catalyst for green industrialization. Yes. And I'll just take it in a couple of points. When you look at shipping is the third largest emissions, followed by, ranking after China and the US. And even though Africa only accounts for 3% of global emission, shipping emissions consist of 13%. They make up 13% of that 3%. And why is that? And that's because of the absence of localized industries. So you have companies that are manufacturing raw materials here. These are being shipped one way to China, perhaps. Then the value addition is created over there, and then the finished goods are shipped here. So if we can have localized industries, that eradicates 13% of emissions, and that frees up capital that can be used to further industrialize the continent. The second is what I would call the proliferation of perceived risk, right? When you talk about attracting foreign direct investments to help us in our climate finance aspirations and agenda, there is a perceived risk, and that perception has become our reality. It costs an African corporate 3 times as much in borrowing costs compared to its counterpart in Southeast Asia or South America. Now, if the AFCFTA is implemented correctly, you would see more sustainable policies, more standardized policies and framework being adopted by the African countries. And that will go a long way to reducing perceived risk, which adds a premium on borrowing costs. And I'd just like to leave with this final note. Afreximbank has been supporting the implementation of the AFCFTA. We launched a $1 billion adjustment fund, and we have mobilized the operationalization of that fund with $10 million. And the idea is essentially because we see the value that the AFCFTA is going to play in transforming the continent. And this is a fund that we will use to catalyze further investments in the sector. And I'm going to use this as a forum to encourage investors to invest in that fund, because that is clearly the future of Africa. You said I had 2 minutes. I can continue, if you...
Helen, I have, it's more than, but since yesterday I made you walk a lot, I forgive you. Eugene, very quickly, I'm not here talking about the port of Baku. I'm here talking about how Baku can play the similar role. They call Baku another Dubai, in attracting investment, finance, from the region, etc. And the vision of offshore finance, etc. Is that something within the horizon?
Well, if you look at Africa, and you look at China, and you look at Azerbaijan, where we are in the center, and part of the middle corridor. In the middle corridor, you should see it as important alternative corridor to the world markets, to the source of supply of raw materials, critical raw materials, which are required, for example, in China. Earlier on in the last panel, you heard 19% of platinum is found in Africa. And platinum, you need it in hydrogen fuel cells. If hydrogen is going to be in the future for cars, and if China's next phase is to develop hydrogen fuel cells, the critical supply routes and the shortest will be through the middle corridor. Where Baku can play a role is to facilitate this trade, as well, maybe provide incentives in the free economic zones to provide the intermediate products for the manufacturing of such automobiles in the free trade zone next to the port of Baku.
Thank you very much. Yufi, I mean, if you look at Yufi and he does this, I think most of the gold in Ghana is in his hand, you know. And I remember we talked with Yufi on, usually people talk about liquidity, lack of dollar. Everybody knows that from one country in Africa to, if you go from Ghana to Nigeria, you have to use dollars and you have to acquire dollars. But I remember Ghana, they started a very interesting, ambitious project where they did gold for fuel. Can you just tell us how did that thing worked?
Well, it's a very simple concept that instead of trying to accumulate dollars to buy the oil, and of course...
Actually, this is very interesting. This is a deal that happened between a UAE company
and a Ghanaian company.
A Ghanaian company.
If you have to... The power of the dollar is because you have to buy or sell gold in dollar, or you have to buy and sell oil in dollar. If you didn't have to, the dollar would not be as powerful as it is. So to eliminate that whole construct, the central bank buys the gold from the gold miners in cedis, the Ghanaian currency, and then has struck this transaction where they pay for the oil with gold, eliminating the dollar equation. And so that has worked very well. What has happened is that then our oil imports have been cheaper because we are buying with a product that is obtained from Ghana. And I think it's these innovative solutions that will help the African continent. The second one, which is, of course, very important, is what today we call the Pan-African Payment Platform, initiated by Afreximbank and supported by the central banks in Africa and the AFCFTA, which creates a mechanism where you can buy local, export, and paid for in the local currency of the importer, eliminating the third party of the dollar. Because right now, if you have to import or export into Africa, you first have to convert it to dollars to pay, although it's within Africa. So if I have to buy something from Nigeria, I'll buy it in cedis, and then when they have to pay, they will have to convert their naira into dollars to pay me. But this eliminates the dollar transaction out of the whole thing by creating an electronic platform where I buy in cedis, they pay me in naira, and I get my money back in cedis.
Thank you very much. Mr. Anar, one of the things I seen all over Africa, a lot of the SME, MSME and SME, they are very, agile. They most of the time developing small businesses, developing this. And what we developed in UAE is more of an e-commerce platform where we attract these people from Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, give them the infrastructure for them to buy, develop the proper shipping, and even we hedged logistics to support these SME, because $200, $300 that they make on that product, today we ship from Dubai to Kenya, $7 a kg, door-to-door custom duty, which what we did is we hedged logistics. When I came, I went to your markets. Also, I saw the same thing. People are going to markets and buying product. Don't you think tools like e-commerce, tools like improvement of shipping can help your SME to grow them, put more opportunity for them, because they need opportunities? How do you see this between Azerbaijan, UAE, and Africa? Because there is some product that you have. I went to the market. There is one product here. I will tell everybody, go to the market here. There is a product that they ship from here to Japan and China. And these two markets are the most difficult market to enter fruits and vegetables. The quality here is beyond norm. So I want to hear, as a last question, how do you get the technology to help your SMEs?
Of course, we agree, because now online platforms, they allow us to go beyond borders. And we as an agency, we have already actually established another portal for our SMEs. It is called KOB Market. KOB stands for SME in Azerbaijani. And what we are also doing now, first of all, of course, we are trying to gather them under our umbrella, because it becomes free for them. I mean, we are providing these services because, you know, for the online platform, they need to pay some entrance fees and everything. And now we're in discussion with other platforms to make the goods that appear on our platform to be placed there. So basically, we pay for our SMEs to be marketed through Amazon, eBay.
I think Alibaba exists here also.
Alibaba, of course, is very popular in Azerbaijan. We're buying a lot of Chinese goods through Alibaba. I personally am a user. And of course, I'm using Amazon AE. I mean, we are buying things from via Dubai. And of course, we're also using some regional platforms. Like we have very big platform from Turkey. You know that it is also present here. It's Trendyol. Now they are also in Azerbaijan. So basically now Azerbaijani SMEs are also able to sell through that platform. And there are two other Russian platforms, Wildberries and Ozon, that we are also discussing with, that our SMEs will be able to sell through them. So basically we are not limiting them. We are not trying to build our own platform. So basically we are trying to facilitate for our SMEs. Yeah, I know. She's the boss. So that's, basically.
Thank you, Anar. I think I would like to thank everybody. Forgive me if I, go on different questions, because I feel that we need to relate to the audience. We need to make them feel that they are part of that discussion. And I really thank you for giving me the opportunity. And inshallah, through this platform and the corridor we're doing, I see good opportunity for partnership as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. As they're taking the photo, let's give them a round of applause for a great session, a great panel. It was quite insightful. And in the spirit of more action, less talk, we want to have the last portion of our program here today, which is a showcase that focuses on green economic zones and investment opportunities within the SEZs.